We will just wait for one more minute and start not promptly, 5 minutes late, but yeah. Welcome, everybody. You can also write in the chat wherever you're joining from, maybe time zone, what time. Hope it's not 2 a.m. It's 2 p.m. here. Uh, oh, wow. All the way from Ukraine. Yeah. Oh my God, it is 2:35 a.m. So uh, respect for, yeah, for joining for very late or early morning, very early morning. Okay, so let's get started since it's 5 minutes past the time. I just kindly ask everybody, maybe for the time being, to mute yourself. And then towards the end, we will have a lot of questions or a lot of time for questions. So you can ask your questions as well. So, as people come in, I would just kind of slowly start, but welcome everybody and thank you so much for being here. I am really happy to kick off this new series, Indigenous Voice in Language and Technology. So this interview series brings together conversation with Indigenous leaders, scholars, technologists, educators, and community advocates who are working at the intersection of language, culture, AI, digital media, and emerging technologies. So, through kind of personal stories, lived experiences, and community perspectives, we want to center Indigenous voices that are shaping the future of technology on our own terms. So, Jamalomba Nation Yang, nga yelhor mean, the chefs na jigangan ya gajim tangan chaner gong, nga yelp ya scan the mis ya leskovi porangong. So hello everybody, I am Yulal Hawa. I am a language revitalization mentor with the Endangered Languages Project, who's hosting this event today. I am a native speaker of Chostyev on the Tibetan Plateau and someone who cares deeply about the challenges and opportunities in the realm of language and technology. So that's how it came, this everything kind of came to be. So one of the goals for this series is to amplify the knowledge, the priorities, and the vision of Indigenous communities in the conversation of AI and language technology. We also want to highlight the incredible work that already happening across communities, from AI-powered tools, digital archives, and youth robotic programs and grassroots initiatives. So more than anything, we hope this becomes a space for learning from one another. And a lot of our work at the Endangered Languages Project is grounded in workshops, mentorship, resource sharing, building connections across communities. So if that resonates with you, please check us out. And it's going to drop our website in the chat. You can learn more about us and what type of services we provide. So now I'm truly honored to introduce our first guest for this series, Peter Lucas Jones. So before reaching out to him, I was just telling him before everyone joined, I've learned about his work. I read through some online posts about him. And I was really anxious to reach out to him, but he kind of really responded immediately saying yes, he's able to join for this interview. So I'm really grateful and thank you for coming. So maybe many people you know who Peter Lucas is. Many maybe you don't know. So Peter Lucas Jones is a Maori technologist, broadcaster, Indigenous data sovereignty advocate whose work has inspired people around the world thinking about language, AI, and community-led technology. So through his leadership, Tehuku Media, he has helped pioneer Indigenous centered approaches to speech technology and digital language revitalization that are grounded in cultural responsibility and community care. So next we're going to, I will just ask a lot of questions that I've pre-written for the 20-30 minutes, and then we will leave 15 minutes for audience to ask questions as well. So, Peter, yeah, thank you for joining us again. To begin, would you kindly like to introduce yourself in any way you want? Yeah.
O tēnā koe Yulha, o tira e mihi ana hau ki a koutou katoa. Te whakaminenga kua hono mai ki nei kaupapa i nei rā. Nā te mea he maha ngā kaupapa kei mua i a tātou, ko te kaupapa o te whakaoranga o ngā reo taketake, me te kōrerotanga o e nā kaupapa. No reira, ka mihi a hau ki a koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. My name's Peter Lucas Jones. I'd just like to thank everybody that have joined us today because we're talking about a lot of important things. One of those, of course, is the revitalization of our language. And another important one for me is the continued speaking of our languages. My name, Peter Lucas, I'm named after my uncle and my auntie, born in Kaitaia. My tribe is Te Aupōuri, but I also come from Ngai Takoto and Ngāti Kahu. And I'm the CEO of Te Reo Irirangi o Te Hiko o Te Ika, which is a tribal broadcaster based in Te Hiko o Te Ika in Kaitaia. Kia ora.
Cool, wonderful. Thank you. So let me start with the first question. Maybe some of them know your work. Is there something that you're doing right now that's that kind of excites you just to kind of break the ice in the room?
Well, something that really excites me at the moment is broadcasting live events in our community. And those events are things like manu kōrero, which are speech competitions in our native language, te reo Māori, kapahaka, which of course is our traditional Māori performing arts, and also other events where tribal decisions are being made. And in that way, as a tribal broadcaster, we're able to connect our diaspora with the important topical issues that are occurring in our villages and in our traditional territory. It's important to keep people connected. There are about 7,000 languages in the world today. We know that when a language disappears, it's not just grammatical structure and pronunciation or intonation that passes away. What is lost is culture, identity, and connection. Broadcasting, tribal broadcasting, is a way for us to not only broadcast in our language, but to keep people connected to the heartbeat of the villages that we descend from.
Thank you. I'm just taking lots of notes. That's so I'm still paying attention, but yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, this is space today is also for people to connect, and it's not necessarily like a lecture or anything, but yeah, for people to kind of share resources and share experiences. So hopefully we will get to know some of our audience later in the series. I mean, later in the meeting. So first, kind of serious question. In your view, what are the core challenges in language technology today, and what do people often misunderstand about these challenges?
I think a common problem with data science today is that there are scientists working with indigenous data and they're not responsible or accountable, or they don't feel accountable for the outcomes of their use of that data. And as the CEO of a tribal radio station, I understand that we are established as kaitiaki or guardians of the data that we gather every day. And when I say that, what I mean is we are conducting 5 to 7 interviews every day with people from our community in our language. And as the kaitiaki of that data, we gather it and broadcast it to inform and entertain. But contained within that data are stories. Those stories could be about anything and everything. And what we've learned is that trust is extremely important in the community work and Māori language broadcasting work that we lead in our community, mandated by our community. And accountability goes hand in hand with trust. And with that come expectations. And if I circle back around to what I think is a common problem today, is that a lot of corporations, a lot of entities, and of course, individuals that are involved with data science today, working with Indigenous data, are not connected in any way to that data and sometimes do not understand what it represents, especially because as an Indigenous language, Te Reo Māori is amongst the minority of minority languages. Many people out there say that language loss is inevitable for minority languages. I challenge that because language loss for Indigenous languages has been anything but an accident. In many of our communities, it has been the result of systemic political supremacy that either saw the language beaten out of our grandparents or parents' generations, and others of our community sometimes abandon our language and culture because of white assimilation and the belief that to get ahead in the Western world, we must shed ourselves of our traditional identity. All of those things have harmed our language. And when I think about decolonization, and when I think about what that means for our future generations, the work that I do with Indigenous language technology is to ensure that whatever is done supports intergenerational transition and does not harm our language any further, but instead helps to support revitalization, not to replace teachers or speakers or our traditional knowledge keepers or our language keepers, but to arm our people with tools that can be used to support language revitalization. So, those are some of the things that I think about in response to your question.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I remember you said in one of your interviews that language data is land. And I think that's a really powerful connection or powerful, how do you say, way of thinking about language data because sometimes nowadays data is everywhere. So it doesn't seem like it's as valuable. It's scraped everywhere, stolen everywhere, used everywhere. But yeah. Thank you for, yeah, that. So I guess you answered this, my other question. So I'm going to jump to the other one. I think in some of the posts that I mentioned, read about you, I think a lot of the headline says, "Oh, teaching machine how to understand human language." So I'm curious about what do you feel is the purpose for machine to understand human language? You can really go in any direction, philosophical or yeah, however you want to answer this question.
For us, it was about documenting our language. I can only respond to that from my experience. For 35 years, Te Reo o Te Hiko o Te Ika have been interviewing the native speakers from our community. For those decades, we have spoken to many of our elders, many of our parents, our grandparents, and we also talk to our young people. And in all of that, we had noticed that our language proficiency across generations was being impacted. Whilst we still have a number of speakers, the proficiency of those speakers has been impacted by the dominant language that has been English. So, our 30 years of archives, we wanted to transcribe. And the reason we wanted to transcribe those was to provide content, learning content. And that learning content is to support people on their language journey. In all of our interviews, we also learnt that our people have particular areas of interest. They love talking about housing. We love listening about housing. We love listening to topics related to the environment, whether it's our traditional medicines, our traditional healing methods, or it could in fact be to do with food sovereignty. But the data that we've collected has also represented kōrero tukuiho, or our traditional knowledge. We started to tag and label that data once we started to transcribe it, tagging words of preference, idiomatic expressions, colloquialisms, place names, and then explaining them. Not in English, though, in our language. So we would find terms, words of preference, words that were perhaps out of use, that were perhaps popular in the time of our parents or our grandparents, and uh, uh, reviving those expressions and creating content out of our archives. But what we quickly found out was it was going to take us forever to transcribe 35 years of archives. As a tribal broadcaster, we have concentrated for 35 years on broadcasting in our language. Our grandmothers were the ones that dreamed the dream. And the dream was that we would be able to have our own news and information, our own music, our own platform to broadcast that type of content to our listeners who are a primarily Maori audience. So our radio station is one of the repositories of a huge Indigenous language audio and film collection. But what we quickly learnt was it was going to take us forever to transcribe that. So we decided to teach the computer to speak our language, to speed up the way in which we could transcribe automatically speech to text. Our language is not a language that is traditionally a written language. With the coming of the missionaries and the Christianization of the various tribes, uh, we have had a few different orthographies over over the last 150 years or more. And we had to make a decision which orthography were we going to go with. So we decided to go with modern Maori orthography. And to be fair, it's easy enough to teach the computer to change between orthographies. What we needed to prove was that it could be done. Why? Because Te Reo Māori is not a major language. It does not have the prestige associated to English, the language of colonization, or other languages like Spanish and French, or languages that have many, many speakers. Our language does not have a lot of data. And as I mentioned, we do not traditionally have an orthography. We were an oral language. So acoustically, we are very strong. And we had to collect a lot of text as well from our various tribal manuscripts, repatriating text data from other repositories. And let's face it, a lot of our special things have been removed from our possession and can be found in galleries, museums, libraries that do not belong to my tribe, Te Aupōuri, but those artifacts do. And where are they? They're all around the world. So for us, this journey was also a journey of reclamation and re-indigenizing and imbuing the systems that we were going to develop with the values and principles of our people. What did we achieve? What we did was we achieved an automatic speech recognition model that transcribes our language with 92% accuracy using trustworthy ethical AI that we also developed. Because to develop this type of technology, there are three things that you need. Of course, we need the data, highly tagged and labeled data, accurately and precise. But of course, you then need access to compute and you need access to algorithms. And we worked on ensuring that we had access to those three things in a way that represented Indigenous data sovereignty from our context and in our perspective. When we did that, we also launched into a competition, a reading competition, where we had more than 2,500 speakers of our language from our language community reading Maori language sentences in a reading competition. And in roughly 10 days, we amassed more than 350 hours of speech and text pairs from some 200,000 recordings. And that was an unheard of level of engagement among researchers in the AI community. In fact, people still ask us how we achieved that. And how we achieved that is cultural intelligence. And when you come from the community and you are a native speaker of the language, there is a special connection that you have with the other speakers of the language. So more recently, we've also worked alongside our sister language and Kanaka Maoli partners from the native Hawaiian community to support ways in which our sister languages too can lead solutions technology solutions for and from their own context. And I think that's important in this work, Yuha, because there's lots of people that want to do it for us. I think it's fine when we invite them to participate, but for a long time, our language and our communities have been the subject of academic studies that extracted information and a wealth of knowledge from communities. So, whilst we taught the computer to speak our Indigenous language, I think more importantly was that we recognized these types of tools need to be governed appropriately. And so we developed something called the Kaitiakitanga Data License. And that's a word that I used earlier, kaitiaki, and it's like a guardian or a protector. And when all our land was confiscated, when our land was stolen from us, what we realized is that language loss follows land loss and cultural decline follows the language loss. And right now, it's quite popular and almost fashionable to be supporting Indigenous language. But these are the quite often these are the sorts of things that we must protect the integrity of our language because it has been harmed. So for our APIs, for our language tools, they must not be used for bad things like surveillance of our people, because that's the sort of stuff that language technology can be used for. And I say it should not be used for surveillance because Maori women in New Zealand are the most incarcerated women in our country. 65% of the jail population are Maori women. 55% of the jail population are Maori men, yet we're only about 17% of the national population. So our data license is something that um, stands in opposition to these tools being used for tracking or discrimination or unfairness. But also, we don't want people using our tools to then go and build their own Māori corporate or big corporations accessing our tools to then mine Māori data for commercial gain. And we know that research for medical purposes is leaving the forest and now going to the seabed. We are the people of the ocean, Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, the largest ocean in the world. And along with our sister languages from the Pacific, we're mindful that our Indigenous languages from the Pacific preserve traditional knowledge about the ocean, the land, the sky, the climate. And when we think about climate change and climate response, our transmission of resilience strategies have endured for hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. So, whilst we achieve something for our Indigenous language, I'm also mindful that we together can embrace something in the Pacific that could perhaps be a fine tuned solution for other Indigenous languages on our model, which is, of course, a very closely um, related language to other Polynesian languages in the Eastern Pacific. So, collaboration with other Indigenous communities, I believe, is essential, not only for effective climate adaptation, but because together we are stronger and we all hold and have preserved and retained and sustained different parts of knowledge pertaining to different parts of the Pacific Ocean. And that's why I believe to save our planet, we must save our language. Because the body of knowledge that is Māori idiomatic and colloquial expression, all our vocabulary for our fauna and flora, our entire knowledge of our biodiversity, it could be lost without hope of retrieval if we do not uh, keep our language alive, and our capacity as Māori to know and understand our own heritage, our own philosophical worldview. It is carried in the cultural memory contained within our language. And if that was to pass away, our unique Māori identity and ethos could realistically cease to exist. And so those ontologies and the nomenclature associated with naming places, with naming our entire biodiversity, it is very, very important. And that's why I say we must empower communities to lead the change they need. We don't need outsiders saving us with capitalism. What we needed were the resources to get started. We had a dream, we achieved a solution for a problem, and we actually found other solutions along the way. And one of those things has been the importance of accuracy and precision in technology for languages. And I say that because many translations on big tech translation platforms are just simply wrong. We must lead benchmarking decisions. We must lead them. The native speakers of the languages, the speakers of the languages that are the indigenous languages, because language context can be misunderstood and misinterpretation harms the language. One example for me that sticks out is I wrote in the other day into one of these platforms. E noho tamariki mā. And that means children, sit down. It's something that you might say to your grandchildren or your nephews or nieces, or you might hear a teacher say to children in a classroom. The translation I was served back was be a white child. That's not what e noho tamariki mā means. But we know that these big corporations serve often to perpetuate colonial bias. And when you think what e noho tamariki mā means and be a white child, you think to yourself, that's exactly what they wanted our parents and grandparents to be when they entered the education system. So I do believe that Indigenous data sovereignty, in terms of how we tag and label data, who we make it available to, it must be governed by and for our people, and that's important because that data, our language, has emerged from the landscape, the life of our people, the enduring experiences in the environment. And that's why I say data is land.
Oh, thank you. You unpacked a lot in that. Yeah, I think the starting of why and who initiates these projects or that intention piece, I think it's really, really key. That's how I understand it. Absolutely. And yeah, thank you for sharing those experiences. So moving on to the next question. So kind of still on the data sovereignty question, have you encountered a situation where digitalizing language material created tension within communities? And how were those decisions navigated? It can be from your own experience or things that you heard or known.
One example that comes to mind is benchmarking. And what I mean is what's correct and what's incorrect. And what we know about language keepers and knowledge keepers is they are the epitome of accuracy, and they are very precise. Our kuia and kaumātua that are responsible for making Māori medicine, They are extremely precise with that. And that in itself is a science. When it comes to language, language unlocks culture, and it is the key to our traditional knowledge. So I think what we have learnt from our elders is that whilst documentation and digitization is one thing, the way we store that data, the way we govern access and manage access to that data is also really important. Because when it's on hard drives, when it's in books, when it's on VHS tapes, people can only come and get that from you if they ask you for it. But once it's online, we know that big corporations have been, um, I guess, harvesting and mining data, uh, copious amounts of it, without consideration for the ownership of that data or the rights and interests of Indigenous people. And it's kind of like the return of the tall ships. Only now they're not taking away our artifacts, they're taking away our data. So that's why I say it's really important for us to have our own platforms, our own repositories. You won't find any of the te reo irirangi o te hiku o te ika content on YouTube. We've got the whare kōrero. And that's because every time we put our content into somebody else's house, it doesn't belong to us anymore. And so when we put it on those sorts of big corporation platforms, we're actually giving away our data and our information. And usually our funders, they will do their best to um, funnel our information into those big corporation platforms. But those big corporation platforms, they don't belong to us. They belong to those companies that serve to increase profit for their shareholders. And when I walk down the street in Kaitaia, the community that I come from, which is about 65% Indigenous, I think to myself, I wonder how many of those big corporation shareholders are walking down this street. And the answer to that is none of them. So that's why we really want to be careful where we put our data. We've developed the whare kōrero, and the whare kōrero is our own platform. And it's a place where we can host our content and serve our content to our tribal audience. We've also developed an app called Rongo, and Rongo is a pronunciation app because through all of this, what we learnt is that mispronunciation of our Indigenous language can obscure the meaning that a speaker is trying to convey. And so we are in the process of developing pathways for second language learners that have been alienated from our language through colonization and, of course, assimilation to return native sound to their mouths. And so we've got a series of programs that serve to enhance learners to speak with Maori sounds. And we often hear uh, vowels and long vowels and diphthongs where two vowels follow one another, and sometimes words where we have three vowels or four vowels following one another. And so, in this way, we're able to support speakers through the intimacy and privacy of their own experience on a handheld device, especially because for some of our people, um, language loss has been extremely traumatic. And the feeling of being judged when making an effort by perhaps relatives or other proficient speakers, the feeling of being of inadequacy are things that are real for family members that are learning the language that was literally beaten out of their family. So we've taken that into account because we want to support people through that. We want to support Maori people through that because we believe that that is an expression of mana motuhake, of self-determination. We do believe that when we build tech for Indigenous languages, we also have to meet our people where our people are. 87% of the members of my tribe do not live in our traditional territory. And the urbanization of the members of our tribal groups disrupted the systems that sustained our language as a method of communication in our families for hundreds and sometimes thousands of years. And so we must take that into account so that any technology that we develop serves to support language revitalization and not harm it. We've also developed Kaituhi, which is an automatic bilingual transcription service, and we've developed synthetic voices. And those synthetic voices, of course, must represent at least a near native sound. We we focus on ensuring that our synthetic voices in our Indigenous language sound like Maori people speaking Maori. And for us, that's important because language is connection, language is identity, and language is the key to our traditional knowledge.
Wonderful, thank you. I will ask a last question for the sake of saving some time for audience as well. I think I'm just curious about, I mean, the whole, we can't, you said we still need computing power, that we need to still rely some on external big tech we still have some sort of collaboration need to happen in order to build these systems. So I was just curious, does that scare you, or does that, in other words, for the future of this type of work, do you think we need to have our own kind of computing power? Is that even possible? Uh,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. We have our own computing power because we can't, our New Zealand dollar can't buy American services. Well, certainly not a lot of it. I mean, we trained our first model on one chip. We don't need 100,000 chips destroying the environment to solve the problem we were trying to solve. And I think we've got to take into account that we don't need to destroy the planet to create generative AI at the scale and cost that is occurring right now. And that's why I say save our language and save the planet. Because contained within our language is also the values and the principles that we have lived with for many, many generations. We do our best to make sure that we can be on a pathway to sovereignty. And the pathway to sovereignty is a journey. Having our own GPUs that we can share across Indigenous language revitalization projects, developing language AI or speech technologies. I think it's important because it represents ethical AI that is not owned by big corporations. Like I said, when we put all our stuff in their platforms, it doesn't belong to us anymore. And I think it's important for us to recognize that We are the guardians of the data that we have been mandated to protect. I'm not saying everybody should do what we're doing. I'm just saying that this is what has worked for us. And it's been important for us. We've been supported by collaborations with groups that have emerged from big tech. And I'm not saying that it's all bad. All I'm saying is that there is another way and that we have to have hope and inspire people to lead the solutions for their own community language groups.
Wonderful, cool. That's the last question. I think we can take some questions from the audience. I see one. It says, would you recommend any one particular AI software that's more trustworthy than others? I think it's very similar to one questions I have about which tools and approaches turn to be generalizable and scalable versus those need heavy customization for each language. So kind of general, yeah, choosing of yeah, which.
I would start with the methodology first, and documentation for us was the big step at the beginning, because you can have access to all the different software options and still not have any data. So, like, there's a plethora of software options out there and algorithms out there, and there will be different best case scenarios for different languages. Some of our languages are polysemic, some of our languages are polysynthetic. So the solution or the best case software option might be different for each language. I would also say that when the tall ships came to our shores, they didn't just bring diseases. They also brought new technologies, and we used those new technologies. My tribe certainly did, Te Opori, to enhance the way in which we worked. So I think it's important for us to use what technologies can support our aspirations. But I would say that whilst there are a plethora of software options out there, we must first have the data to run tests, trials, and train models, and then, of course, compare what is the best case for any particular language. That's what we've done. We've used a number of software options, and and then, of course, got to where we are today, which is an 8% error rate.
Cool. I would jump to Artem. You have a question? You can say, yeah, if you want to just, yeah, ask a question.
Yeah, it's better if I use my voice because my question is a bit wordy. Thank you for all your thoughts. I think it's important. Maybe my question is a bit off topic, but it's a unique possibility to ask Maori speaker about what's going on in New Zealand. And I guess that the question I ask is relevant for many minority communities in the world. As far as I know, so-called pakejas are not always supporting Maori language and Maori identity, and it's difficult to promote Maori language if the majority is against these steps. And how it goes, is it possible, in your opinion, to convert the language of Maori to promote it not as a ethnic language of Maoris, but as a regional, as a national language, to position Maori language as a national language of New Zealand um, for everyone who lives in New Zealand?
I think there are a number of different perspectives on that. There is language normalization. However, the systemic views of many people towards Maori language have evolved as a result of colonization. And so it's difficult, I think, for me to believe that our language was ever meant to survive in a system that was supposed to eliminate it. So, like, language elimination um, has certainly been profound in many communities, and language revitalization, I think, is also an opportunity to reconnect the people of the language with their identity. Because we could spend a lot of time teaching non-Maori our language, but still our people work two jobs to just put food on the table. Our people die 10 years younger than non-Maori people. If something like all the negative statistics are not in our favor. So like personally, I like to do what I can to support my people to speak the language. And if we can encourage others to see us differently along the way, that's great. If we can encourage allies to work in ways and use the influence to normalize language in the spaces that they operate in, then that's wonderful. We have made many steps forward in the normalization of the language. Our aunt was famously fired for saying kia ora when she worked for a telephone company here in New Zealand. Kia ora means hello, but that's a well documented case, and she's now Dame. She was knighted, not for that, but for many things that she's done within our community. Rangimārie Nader Glavish, Dame Nader. I think it's small actions that we can do as well every day by using our language with others, but also the government has a responsibility itself. So we can't run away from the fact that the government or the crown have a treaty, and that treaty was signed by Maori chiefs and, of course, the representatives of the crown, and that guarantees to us certain rights and interests. And the recognition of our language as a paonga or a treasure is something that occurred. And when I think about that, it's important for me to mention that Te Reo Irirangi o Te Hiko Tika, the broadcaster that I'm the CEO of, by virtue of its organizational genealogy, we're committed to the revitalization of culture and language. Now, the report of the Waitangi Tribunal for atrocities committed to the language was released in 1989, if I remember correctly, and the language claim was called Y11. And then there was an outcome of a Privy Council case that occurred in 1991, and that was regarding the sale of state-owned broadcasting assets, and that had far-reaching consequences for Maori language and broadcasting, including the establishment of our station. What I'm saying is media has an important role to play in the normalization of Indigenous language, and that media has a role to play in changing hearts and minds that for generations not only saw our language as as beneath or less than other languages, it also perpetuated views that our people were the same.
Wonderful, thank you. I think for the respect of time, we went a little over since we started a little early. But yeah, if Peter Lucas, if you have time, there are a couple more questions. Some are smaller, easy to answer questions, some are bigger questions. Documentation, three major things to document of language. I think that's I just also along with Anna's two resources she shared, would like to recommend the Indigenous Languages Project's language revitalization mentor, because some of us who are also online pious, we have had a lot of documentation experience as well, and we can walk through our experiences in a one-on-one setting and kind of understand your language and your community a little better to kind of suggest things. And I will drop the language revitalization mentor page as well. And then another says, do you have any data on numbers of Maori living overseas? I understand there's
many Maori living overseas. It was some hundreds of thousands, I would imagine, but I don't know. I don't know exactly how many are in Australia. I thought there was, there's in excess of 100,000. That's for sure. But they're part of our diaspora. And it's an important situation, being able to connect people with language and culture and their community when urbanization has seen our people have to look for opportunity. And I want to close by saying we never wanted to just be the users of technology. We wanted to be the developers of the technology as well. Because whilst we're teaching computers how to speak our language so that we can have live captioning, so that we can have synthetic voices for our non-speaking family members that use devices to communicate, so that we can have pronunciation models, so that we can have a speech interfaces in our language, so that we can speak to smart homeware in the future. All of that sort of stuff. We're creating APIs to do all of that stuff in our language. But what we're also doing is capability development. Because how many Maori and Pacific Island people do you think work in this field? Not many. And so we're about creating opportunity, economic opportunity for our people that have been excluded for such a long time, relegated to cleaning and making sandwiches and otherwise just doing menial jobs and treated as a labor force. This is about creating high value jobs and populating them with the people of the language. And that's been a big part of our stations, past, present, and future, growing technology opportunities and platforms, developing them in a way that not only puts food on the table, but grows high value jobs for our next generation.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Hey, Lucas.
Yeah,
One
thank you so
question, one question.
much. Yeah, sorry,
Hello.
somebody. Okay. Is it a quick question so that we can?
Yeah. It's a good question
Okay.
actually. Yeah. Hi, I'm Sai Kumar from University of Hyderabad, bachelor student from India. So I'm having one question to Lucas. As Lucas mentioned, he's documenting the Maori language.
Oh,
I am
thanks.
having one question regarding it. Like, I think there will be dialects or sub languages in Maori language itself. How you are going to preserve them? Like, there will be different dialects, right, in Maori itself. You guys are making one standard language to preserve the language or transfer language one generation to another. But what about the dialects, like the idiomic language? So whatever it is, I'm not getting the words, but still the the dialectical languages. What about that? Like while making standard language, what about the minor language, Maori language itself? Thank you.
That's a really great question. So we're part of a tribal radio network, and there are 21 tribal radio stations. We're one of those stations, but we work collectively in our language revitalization work, each working autonomously and in their own way. But we're also mindful that my station that I come from, Te reo irangi o te hiko o te ika, it's a station that still speaks and has spoken the most Maori language on it. So we're coming from a stronger position than communities with a station that have much fewer speakers. So in those circumstances, we share content, we share data, according to our values and principles in ways to support revitalization, whether that's digitally or through music or through technology development, in ways to enhance the revival, retention, and maintenance of our dialects. We don't have a lot of active dialects. And even when we do have those active dialects, they are highly intelligible, so we can understand one another quite clearly. I think the opportunity to work closely enhances the way that we can also work closely with our sister languages like Hawaiian, Tahitian, the Marquesas language, Niue, Samoa, Tonga, and Tahiti. Those languages we're closely related to. And I think part of the solution in the future will be working closely with those most closely related to us to find solutions. Because when you develop this technology, and when you create it and get it on device, you quickly realize it costs money to run. And because we have a minority language and we are in a place of revitalization, those costs can be overwhelming. But together we might be able to make these technologies wipe their own faces. So that's another reason why working together with our sister languages and our sister dialects is important, because financially, the viability of these technologies, putting them in the hands of our people who might be developers, who might be users, it does have a financial cost in the future. And we've got to understand what that means and work together to solve it.
Thank you.
Right. I think I missed one question, but I think we're over time, so I'm gonna close it. Hopefully that's okay. Thank you for everybody for bearing with the going over time. Thank you, Peter, for really sharing your experience, your time, and your wisdom with us. And thank you, everybody who's joining with us, some at 2 a.m. But I really appreciate it. I think conversations like this really remind us that technology is never really about tools, about people and how we do it and why we do it. So I am looking forward to our next guest. I just want to do Michael Running Wolf is scheduled for June. So stay tuned, everybody. If you don't know who he is, just look him up. And he was really excited. Oh, Peter is going first. A lot of my work is inspired by Peter. So yeah, I will release those dates as well. So thank you, everybody. With that, we will officially close this meeting.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you.